My name is Julie Ann Link, and welcome to the Music Link. This week on the Let's Link project, I'd like to welcome the principal bassoonist of the Midland-Odessa Symphony and Chorale, Philip Hill. Thank you so much for being here, Philip.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
For everyone watching, I was Philip's predecessor in Midland, and we met after he performed Tosca a few years ago. Philip, please share an overview of who you are and what you do as a professional musician.
Sure. So I'm a native of Virginia in the United States, and I was born and raised in Virginia and did high school band, middle school band, just like most Americans do. And I went to university, got a bachelor's degree from East Carolina University. In North Carolina, it's a different state, but it was only about 2 hours down the road. And then I did my master's degree in music performance at the University of Arizona, almost on the other side of the country, not quite West Coast. And then almost immediately after that, I auditioned for and was asked to take the position as principal bassoon with Midland-Odessa Symphony. And with that, with moving here to Texas, came other things to do, like adjunct faculty at University of Texas, Permian Basin. I have several private students, not as many now because of coronavirus, but lots of private students. There's lots of performance opportunities, and then of course just getting connected in a completely different community from where I grew up in Virginia. And I've been here for about 3.5 years now.
Thanks, Philip. Can you talk a bit more about your band program and starting the bassoon and how you got introduced to music in Virginia?
Yeah, so my band program was the middle school program was the type that starts only a few instruments at a time. I've noticed that that's not normal. Now that I've been to several states and been out of the country a few times, I know now that that is very abnormal for a middle school to go an entire year without starting anyone on double reed instruments, French horn, tuba, larger instruments where you need someone a little bit taller, like bigger hands, that more dedicated to dealing with a reed that doesn't always work, things like that. I spent all of 6th grade playing the clarinet. That was just the instrument I started on. I think that was among, let's see, what options did we have? We had clarinet, flute, saxophone, trumpet, trombone, and then percussion. And the reason I chose clarinet is because, well, it's funny, kind of embarrassing reason, honestly. I really wanted to do percussion, actually. Most young boys, they want to do percussion or brass, right? Or saxophone. That's kind of rare that a boy would want to do flute or clarinet. And it's common to find lots of flute players, lots of great flute players are men, lots of great clarinet players are men. But when you're a boy and you're in school and it's just more common to want to start on brass or percussion. So I wanted to do percussion, and I also was playing drum set a little bit when I was a kid. My parents bought me a drum set. I already knew how to play a little bit of piano, so I was used to hitting things to make music. So I thought, well, percussion just kind of makes sense. I already know how to do that. Let's do that. But the problem was when they said percussion, the description of that was snare drum and bells. And what they meant was snare drum and mallets. But when they said bells, I thought they meant like handbells, like at a church, where you have that one bell in your hand and it makes one sound. And I thought, that's really stupid. That's really boring. I'm not doing that. And I already know kind of how to play snare drum. And I just didn't understand. I didn't fully understand that if you do percussion, you'd be able to eventually play tons of different instruments. I didn't really think that through. I was just thinking, I really don't want to do handbells, so I'm just not going to do it. So my choices were, they said, well, you move your fingers really well, so you should play a woodwind instrument. For whatever reason, I didn't want to play saxophone. I don't remember why. Actually, I think they didn't even recommend that I play saxophone. They gave me some recommendations. They said, I think they said clarinet or flute, or I think they said trumpet, just because, you know, I could buzz my lips. I didn't think I could do it that well, but they said I could do it well. And then yeah, flute and clarinet. And I said, I don't want to play flute. That's for girls. You know, at that time where it was very stereotypical for girls play flute and boys play saxophone or something like that. So I was like, well, I'll just play clarinet. I'm just going to do that. And so I played clarinet and I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. And I made some very good friends who also played clarinet, and my band director played clarinet. And I liked all those people. It was actually a really, really great experience. And then I went to a concert, like a middle school concert, and the older kids were playing more instruments. And that's when the band directors explained, here's some other options for the sixth graders: tuba, French horn, bassoon, oboe, bass clarinet, bigger instruments or double reed instruments. And I just saw the bassoon. I didn't know what it sounded like. I just saw it and I thought it looked kind of cool. So I said, well, I'm doing okay at clarinet. I'm not doing as well as some other people, and I would like to be doing better. And I don't like it that much. Bassoon looks really cool, and my friends want to play bassoon too. Two of my best friends, they also play clarinet. They wanted to switch to bassoon, so I was like, hey, let's all switch to bassoon. And our band director was very hesitant because the three of us were actually, we were all pretty good at clarinet. We weren't the best ones, but a couple, they were better than me actually, but we weren't the best, but we were pretty good. And he said, I don't know, you're really good at clarinet. I mean, if you really want to do it, I'll let you try it. And so, which is so ironic, right? Normally when someone wants to play bassoon, a band director is like, really, you do it? And they're so excited to give you a bassoon. But maybe it was a little bit of reverse psychology there.
Mm.
But anyway, so two of my really good friends, the three of us all switched to bassoon, and it was a lot of fun. It was a ton of fun. And two of us, me and one other guy, we ended up becoming drum majors in high school together. And I even went to his wedding a couple of years ago. We're very good friends. We still keep in touch. And so yeah, that's kind of how I got into bassoon. I just saw it. I thought it looked cool. And so my teachers let me play it, and I kind of just kept doing it. And it was really I have to say, it was really music that I stuck with, not as much the bassoon. A lot of high school bassoon players, at least in Texas, a lot of them know about reeds. They start to learn about it, not necessarily making them, but they know that reeds are kind of important. I had no clue. I had absolutely no clue until at least my second year of college.
Yeah.
So I was just going to band because I liked band. And when we got a chance to play with the orchestra, I was going to orchestra because I liked orchestra. I had no clue how the bassoon fit or not fit. I didn't know that the bassoon was not a jazz instrument. I didn't know that. I mean, I just assumed that it wasn't, because I never heard about it anywhere else besides classical music. And I was like, well, I like classical music, so that's totally fine with me. So yeah, that's a little bit how I got into playing bassoon.
Philip, do any of your family members have a musical background?
Not at all.
Nice.
Well, no, that's a musical background, like a degree or extensive private lessons. No, I'm the only musician that I know of in my family. Maybe some great, great, great grandparent or uncle or aunt had a strong musical background. But as far as I know, I'm the only one. I have a cousin who is pretty good at piano. She took quite a few piano lessons. My dad can sing really well, or at least he can match pitch really well. Let's put it that way. He's not really a singer. He has a good ear. He has a very good ear. And my brother has actually been pretty successful at guitar, like self-taught guitar. I remember when I was in high school, he's 3 years older than me. Um, my A lot of people in my family, they're musical. They can kind of do it, but they don't. They are not into music. They are not musicians. I'm the only one, so I always find it kind of odd when I my family and I'm like, oh, where did I get this from? This is
Mhm.
interesting.
Well, did you always know that you wanted to go into music as a career?
No, no, also no. I didn't really decide on that until I was probably, I guess I had maybe a year and a half left in high school. Um, I was pretty into sports. I was really, or not sports. I was really into soccer. I've never really been into sports. It's just soccer. I grew up playing soccer since I was about 5,
Wow.
which is around the same age that I started playing piano
Wow.
and playing drum set, playing drums and singing at church choir.
Mm.
Neither of those things lasted that long, but the soccer lasted through high school. Uh, Even I'm pretty sure I can't remember if it went all the way through senior year of high school. I don't remember at this point, but the soccer lasted. Um, but then music eventually prevailed because I just said, you get to that age where you're about to become an adult, and you're going to graduate from high school and you need something to do. You don't want to just sit around doing nothing, waiting for a job or a spouse who has a job to just fall into your lap. That it doesn't really work out that way. So I didn't really get to talk like, now what are you going to do when you graduate from high school? But I kind of just knew, like, okay, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And soccer wasn't really cutting it. Music was really making me feel useful and fulfilled, and I really enjoyed it. So I was just like, well, I didn't have many role models because not many people in my family were musicians, and I knew very little. Like I said a few moments ago, I knew very little about how the bassoon fits or doesn't fit into music. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew that I liked music, and well, maybe I should go get a degree in it. So I talked to my band director, and he gave me a list of schools, and he said, you should probably do education. It seems like you'd be a pretty good teacher.
Oh,
Your drum major, you seem like you're pretty good at that. You're a pretty good player too, but you don't really need a degree to perform, but you do need a degree to teach. So you should do education. And I was
wow.
like, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I really looked up to my band director. I really admired him. So I ended up going to his alma mater, which
Wow.
was also the alma mater of my private teacher, um, who, by the way, I didn't start taking lessons with until I was 16. That age where I was like, well, kind of need something to do. And my band director said, wait, you haven't been taking lessons this whole time? And I was like, no,
Oh.
no, no, I had no clue. I didn't know that that was important to take lessons. I had no idea whatsoever. And he said, you need to take lessons. Like, do you like this? And I said, yeah. He said, well, here's some cards of bassoon teachers in the area. Call one of them. Called
Hmm.
one of them. Happened to be Allison Falconberry was her maiden name. That's how I was introduced to her. But by the time I met her, she was Allison Scheibler. She married a man who was in the army, and they traveled a lot. So I
Hmm.
had the opportunity to take lessons with her for 2 years before I graduated from high school, and then she and her husband moved to Germany.
Wow.
So she got me started. I mean, I was already started, but she got me started in the knowledge of, being, intentionally preparing to become a musician. And she also went to East Carolina, just like my band director. Uh,
Wow.
so that's something that kind of fell in my lap, uh,
Mhm.
where, yeah, it was sort of like, I did kind of have that mindset, like, I don't really know what to do. Um,
Yes.
but mainly because I didn't know what I was doing. It wasn't really that I didn't know what to do. I just didn't know what I was doing,
Mhm.
which it might sound like the same thing, but to me that's different. It's
Mhm.
different.
Philip, could you
Yeah,
talk more about the music program at East Carolina University and what that was like for you?
sure. So um, It's a 4-year public university. It's not a conservatory. Um, I don't remember how much I knew about conservatories when I was first getting into college.
Mm,
Most of the conservatory life I learned about when I was in college already. But I kind of knew that I wanted to be at a university, not at a conservatory,
mhm,
mainly because I wanted to keep my options open and I wanted to network and make friends and relationships with people who were not just musicians. I
right.
wanted to diversify the people that I knew. As far as career and interests, I was still into sports. I really liked science.
Mm,
So, and I knew that East Carolina had a good physics program. So a lot of my science credits were just physics classes. um, but yeah, the music program itself is it's a relatively small school. It's much smaller than schools like Florida State, Michigan,
mm,
Michigan State, Indiana, University of Arizona, or Arizona State.
mhm,
It's a very good school. To me, it's one of those hidden gem schools. You have the obvious schools like all the conservatories and Michigan State or Michigan. You know those big universities that have large studios where they need two teachers of just one instrument. This school is not that. It's very small. It's hidden in North Carolina. Um, Maybe you could almost say it's dwarfed by UNC School of the Arts. But when you go there and you experience the faculty and what the faculty have to share with you, I believe it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a school to contend with. It's
mhm,
definitely a school that, especially if you want to do music education, um, it's one of the top schools for music education. If you want to become a teacher of music, it's I would recommend any of my private students go to that school.
yes.
The student teaching program is very, very good. And then of course the applied faculty are, I felt like I was at a conservatory.
Mhm,
I felt like I was interacting with some of the world's best musicians. I mean, and I play bassoon, but interacting with the string faculty and the voice faculty, it was just, and the piano faculty, it was really, really exciting to see like, man, this is about more than just teaching. This is about playing to the highest level and then sharing that with
mm,
other people. Um, the As far as aesthetics, I mean, I like the colors, purple and gold. The campus is really pretty. The weather's nice. So those are all superfluous things that you can add on. But the program itself is really, really great. I mean, my bassoon teacher, I still go back to him and call him and
mm,
text him, and he helps me with all sorts of things. It's just I can't speak enough about how great of a school it is.
mhm. Could you share a bit more about your master's degree at the University of Arizona?
Yeah, I'd say the same thing about
Mm,
Arizona. I feel like I picked two hidden gems.
mm,
University of Arizona is a little bit bigger, or well, it's much bigger. It's a much bigger music school and university. It's a research one university. I
mm,
think it still is. Last time I checked, it is. When I was there, it was. There are way more graduate students.
mm,
East Carolina did not have very many graduate students. I feel like I could have counted on my hands how many there were. It was just it was again, I was a very naive musician growing up. So seeing someone getting a doctoral degree in music was
mm,
was odd to me. Seeing someone going for a PhD in musicology, I was like, "Oh, that exists." I
mm,
had no clue. I thought it was just you want to play or you want to teach people how to play
uh-huh.
because I grew up in band. So I was growing up in band playing, and then I was being taught by someone who also could play well. So I thought that was the only thing there is. And I thought, well, if you want to be a composer, I mean, we're playing music by people who composed the music. I thought, well, you don't need a degree for that, right? And then theory, well, you need to know theory because you're going to be a teacher, or like it helps you play the music better and understand the
Mhm,
harmony better. So you don't get a degree in that, you just know it. So seeing people getting master's and doctoral degrees at East Carolina in those things was very weird to me. And then when I went to Arizona and saw that, most people I met were graduate students,
Yeah.
I said, oh, okay, this is like a big industry, just like psychology or hard sciences or something. So it was a much more, it's a bigger school. It's a better known school. It's more connected throughout the world, which was very convenient for me. That's how I ended up going to Europe, which we can talk about if you want to talk about that.
Yeah.
And 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 I'd say the same thing about my bassoon teacher there, William Dees, who's retired, by the way. My teacher at East Carolina is not retired yet. Who knows if he'll retire? I don't know. He seems to love his job a whole lot. I don't know. But anyway, my teacher at Arizona, I'd say the same thing about him. He's just a great wealth of knowledge. I can call him, text him, ask him all sorts of things and go back to him. He's a very resourceful person in terms of alternate fingerings and embouchure placement and scraping reeds. He's just a really resourceful person. The same thing for graduate school. I did my master's and bachelor's at different places, so it's kind of weird to me. I'd recommend that someone go get their bachelor's at East Carolina and then go get their master's at Arizona. I don't find myself recommending the opposite because I didn't do that. So my professor's retired from Arizona. They have a new professor there now. So I can't say as much about it now, but the school in general is great. Actually, sorry. Hopefully that didn't sound like I was speaking negatively of the current bassoon professor there. I've met her once and I've heard her playing a little bit. She seems like a very good player. I just don't know her that well. So it wouldn't be fair for me to recommend that someone go there because I wouldn't know what I'm talking about. But the school is very well connected. If you're interested in not only becoming a better player, but also just being connected and finding opportunities, that is an excellent school to go to.
Could you share about your classes that you took as an education degree major and then as a performance major, and any realizations about, what you learned from those and the differences and anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, so for me, the education classes were, man, I'd have to really dig deep and think back. The biggest thing I remember from my education classes is that it was really important to know all the instruments. And singing, of course. I think that my education degree was a very important shape for my performance degree. I don't think that I would have gotten the same thing out of my performance degree had I gotten a bachelor's degree in performance. And I think that's because when I was getting my education degree at such a great school for education, they stressed the importance of going in and having a plan, knowing how the instrument works, knowing how someone else works on that instrument, depending on their age and their skill level, and knowing, just being aware, like, especially if you want to be a band director. I mean, it's not a homogeneous group of instruments. If you're a choir director, everyone's playing the same instrument. It's just voiced a bit differently. If you're a string teacher or like an orchestra director, everyone's playing a small violin or a big violin. I know a lot of string players might get mad at that, but the instruments are the same concept. Oh, with a wind instrument, a double reed instrument is extremely different from a single reed instrument,
Hmm.
which is extremely different from an instrument that is not put in your mouth. Um, so when you're teaching those things, not only do you have to know how the instrument works, you
Hmm.
have to know how to differentiate your teaching like that very quickly in the middle of one teaching session. And to be honest with you, to be honest, when I was getting that degree, I realized that this is not my niche.
Hmm.
I felt that I was a good teacher. I felt that I had like the basic, like the bare bones of being a good teacher, but I did not. I began to believe that being a band director, teaching many instruments at one time, was
Hmm.
not my place. It's not my place. So now I still really get fulfillment out of teaching. It's just that most of the fulfillment I get out of teaching is teaching my own instrument.
Hmm. Hmm.
And teaching, and then right behind that would be teaching more homogeneous groups of instruments.
Mhm.
When I did mine, when it's just more focused, I like when the teaching is more focused.
Mhm.
And I think that's what I got out of the performance degree. I had uh, my my graduate school teacher tell me, so what's the deal with your bachelor's degree in education? And this is when I was about to finish my master's degree.
Mhm.
He said, so what's the deal with your bachelor's? Like, what do you still plan to use that, like directly use that? And I said, no. I really I resolved when I went to grad school that I just did not want to be like a band director or a public school teacher or something full time like that. That I
Mhm.
just after especially after student teaching, I knew that that was not I was not cut out for that.
Mhm.
Uh, I felt like I would have done a disservice to the students had I taken a job like that.
Mm.
They I felt like I'm not doing well for them, and there's a better teacher out there for them. So let me just play and let me just teach bassoon if that opportunity arises.
Mhm.
That's what I told him. And he said, well, you really want to perform. It's hard to get a good performing job. You might need to sustain yourself financially by becoming a band director. And even that was like not worth it. It's not worth
Mm.
it. I would have been miserable.
Mhm.
And I still believe to this day that I would be miserable. Um, but but at the same time, I find my education degree invaluable because I'm still teaching the bassoon. I can still take the concepts that I learned from those classes, rehearsal techniques, beginner methods, or what is it called? Like instrument methods when you learn how to play the different instruments.
Mm.
I use those concepts. That speaks to how useful and how great East Carolina is for a music education degree.
Mm.
I, as a performer, am still using what they've taught me as to become an educator to do now in my career. So they're very different. And then the performance degree was anytime someone asks me about a performance degree, I just say, well, it's basically 2 years of locking yourself in a practice room. And then hopefully you get a job right after that.
Mm.
And I mean, I really mean that. That's pretty much how it felt.
Mhm.
Pretty much how it felt. Um, so, and I almost like to say, if you want to go get a master's in performance and you're not doing that, hopefully the only reason is because the curriculum is not allowing you to do that. The curriculum is asking you to take other classes that are not as performance based.
Mhm. Did you ever consider changing careers even outside of music?
Um, well, yeah, I have. I have. So when I was, like I said, I liked science. I was really into physics, and when I was getting my bachelor's degree, I thought about. I don't think I ever considered dropping music entirely when I was getting
Mhm.
my bachelor's degree, but I definitely thought about adding a physics minor or a double major.
Mhm.
Um, And then, and I mean, in grad school, that was just not a question.
Mm.
That uh, there was one period in grad school where I hurt my shoulder pretty bad, and this was unrelated to music. This injury was not, this was not a music thing. I was just working out with my brother, and I hurt my shoulder, and
Mm.
I was pretty debilitated. I didn't feel like my physical therapy and my orthopedist were helping that much. And so, I felt very discouraged, and I felt like, well, I can't really play bassoon that well right now. Um, I'm spending all this money on this second degree. Maybe I should try and find something else to do, like some sort of desk job. I mean, I was pretty miserable. I was like, let me find some desk job where I don't have to move my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as that thought came across my mind, I was like, I can't do that, because, I grew up an athlete. I grew
Mm-hmm.
up moving my body. I can't just sit at a desk and not move my body for 8 hours a day. So once I started having those thoughts, I was like, no, I have to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then ever since um, I've gotten a job and finished school, yeah, I've thought about it, but normally those thoughts do come from physical fatigue. Um, and we can get to that later, but
Mm-hmm.
it primarily comes from the financial stress. So even before coronavirus, the orchestra I play with now, it's per service. And then the university where I teach, that's an adjunct position. So I am dependent on having a lot of private students. And I don't teach in an area like Austin or Houston or Dallas or Indianapolis, where there's a huge saturation of young bassoon players who are ready and willing to take lessons, and their parents can afford it, and they're ready to pay, and they're always, every month they want them in lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, and even if that was the case, there is always that financial uncertainty. Even if you have 30, 40 students, most musicians kind of might have that in the back of their mind, like, well, what if I lose like 10 students, 15, 20 students, and my income is cut in half or something like that? So yeah, the thought absolutely crosses my mind. But what gets me back on track is that reminder that, well, soccer didn't work out that well. I know that I'm a good player. I try and just remember the toxic thoughts that come to my mind, like, imposter syndrome or physical fatigue or finances. Well, everyone struggles with finances. I mean, there's billionaires that are in debt and they're going to jail for tax issues. So why should I worry about finance, right? There's people that can't pay their mortgage. I don't have to worry about mortgage. I live in an apartment. If I get evicted, well, then I don't have to pay it anymore. Or something, something like that. Well, imposter syndrome. Well, I want a symphony job and I have 2 degrees and I have students who trust me. Why I'm not an imposter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just I try to always find a way to remember that my problems are not unique, and that my problems are much smaller than I believe them to be.
What have you learned about the music industry since graduating?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think anyone's asked me that before.
Mm.
What have I learned about the industry since I've graduated?
Mm.
I've learned since I've graduated and started working, I've learned that it's not as much about music as school makes it out to be.
Mm.
This is an entrepreneurial industry. This is a business of marketing, sales, entrepreneurship. Um, you're A lot of times you have to be almost all the time you have to be a sole proprietor.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you Yes, it is absolutely about honing your craft and sharing art with people and uplifting people's souls and all those fluffy things that people share on Instagram. But it's also about making your product appear attractive in more ways than just saying, well, I'm a great player, or, well, I'm a great teacher. Well, if I got lucky. I got very, very lucky. And I've been, well, I shouldn't say lucky. I've been blessed, been extremely blessed, because again, I grew up a very, very naive um, musician. And when I took the audition for this job, I didn't know anything about audition techniques and audition preparation. I just thought, well, that's the job I want, and this is the way they want me to try and get the job. So just learn the music and go play the music. And hopefully they like me the best. And hopefully I don't mess up. Right. But I didn't know, like, oh, you need 3 months and you need this many reads and you need to practice this many hours a day. And I didn't know that. I kind of just was blessed with this job.
Mm.
I was actually runner up. I was runner up, and the person who won the job declined the offer for
Mm.
personal reasons. And so when I got here, I didn't really know anything. I knew I had the pleasure of meeting Susan Milan, English flutist. Um, I had the pleasure of meeting Susan Milan right before I finished my master's degree, and she, during her residency at University of Arizona, she talked a bit about sales and entrepreneurship and marketing yourself.
Mm.
And that was kind of the catalyst for me realizing, what was the thing she said? I think she said something like, you're in school now and you're well connected and your teachers see you every day and your colleagues, they see you all the time. When if you're fortunate enough to get a job right after you finish school, even if that happens, no one's going to call you anymore. The phone's not going to just ring. The phone
Mm.
rings when you're in school because you're in this bubble, this community where everyone's trying to help each other, assuming they're not catty, you know, um, um, those types of musicians, like very catty and trying to one up each other all the time. Everyone's in the same university trying to help each other. Um, but she said, you finish school and then you go get a job. Even if you get a job, the phone is not going to ring. You need to call people. You need to go out there and do it. And I remembered that when I moved out here.
Mm.
And I had some help. I did have some very good help here, because I'm not the only one here that has to go out and find other opportunities to make ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was your original question? Oh, right. What have I learned about the music industry? Right. It's very much about sales. I learned that you can't just practice and then do your job and then hope that that works. Part of your job is also putting yourself out there
Mm-hmm.
and, starting a podcast like you just did, starting an Instagram or a YouTube page, um, uh, doing cold calls to do solo gigs, chamber music gigs. You have to do those things, trying to find private students. You have to be consistent about that. And even when you feel like, oh, I'm good, I'm making enough money, I'm able to pay my bills, I'm able to eat the kind of nutrition that I want, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to service my instrument and my car and all these things in the way that I want. Don't let up. Don't let up. It's very much about just, and then when you feel like, oh, I'm good, then what I mean by don't let up is from there you have to say, okay, now it's about the art. Now I market my art. Now people know who I am. People are trusting what I have to give them. Give it to them, and make sure you give it to them in a very don't give it to them in a car salesman way.
Mm.
It's a delicate balance, and I'm still working on that balance.
Philip, could you share more about your chamber music career?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of my position here with the symphony is the resident wind quintet, West Texas Winds. And hopefully it's okay if I plug the group.
Of course.
Okay. Okay, cool. So, well, I guess if we're on the air like this, you can't say no, right? No, I'm messing with you. So we're called West Texas Winds. It's a traditional instrumentation of a woodwind quintet. It's our principal members of our symphony, and we have our base concert schedule is a biannual wind quintet concert, and then on top of that we have lots of other performances throughout the community. We in regard to, or as I guess fitting the times, since everyone's kind of at home and doing things online, we said, well, let's start our own podcast. Let's start our own show. So we've got a show. I think we are doing episode 5 in a couple of weeks. It's called From the Archives.
Wow.
And we look at our past performances, and we do a little talk like this. We get on Zoom and do a talk and discuss preparing the music, finding the music, if we had to, commission someone to do it, or maybe it's new music and it's hard to get a hold of the sheet music. We talk about what went into rehearsing it, securing a venue, if it was an alternative gig or concert or something, and then we play the recording. So we have 4 episodes so far. We have Francais, we have, let me see, we have Oscar Navarro. We're going to do another Francais in a couple weeks. And let me see, what are the other pieces we've done? I can't remember right now, but it's a budding show. And hopefully with this, well, I don't want to make this episode too timely, but hopefully with the vaccines coming out, we'll be able to have more live performances.
Yes.
And so that's my current involvement in chamber music. But throughout college, throughout my schooling, I really fell in love with chamber music. I mean, not even music that had bassoon in it. I remember getting on YouTube and on my iPad, and I would just sit on my couch with my iPad and I would just binge watch string quartets. I found what is it? I can't remember the New York radio station, but they have all 16 Beethoven, I think it's 16 Beethoven string quartets. They're on YouTube, and it was like a radio show or radio series where they had a Beethoven marathon. And I was like, this is amazing. How have I not known about this? And I was just finding out about it in my last 2 years of my bachelor's degree. And I watched the same recordings over and over and over again. To the point where I had to memorize, as if I was a string player too. I would, the string players would kind of look at me like I had like a rhino horn growing out of my head. They're like, you know that piece? And I'm like, yeah, why not? Like, you don't know the Francais bassoon concerto? Come on, what's wrong with you? But I mean, that's understandable. String players have tons of repertoire. Bassoon players don't have as much, but we have a lot, but not as much. And so it's not likely that non-bassoonists know our repertoire very well. But I mean, I got into that stuff. I mean, Mozart serenades and Dvorak serenade and Reinecke octet. I mean, I remember getting together with a good friend in college, who we were both getting our music education degrees together, and we had almost all of our education classes together. And we said, hey, I said, hey, I just found this piece by Carl Reinecke, the octet. Just found out about it. I said, hey, we should get together and score study this piece. Like I'll print out the score on IMSLP and we'll just listen to it. And she listened to it. She's like, man, this piece is so cool. And that's what we did. That was my way of hanging out. Hanging out. I mean, unless I'm going to like a football game or, there's like an actual party or something, or like graduation parties, the older students graduate or something like that. My idea of like, oh, well, I'm done practicing. I'm not eating. I'm not working out or anything. Let's score study. That I love doing that stuff. So then in graduate school, any chance I had to play chamber music for a friend's, or not a friend, but like a colleague's recital, I said, oh yeah, I'm all in. I'm all in. I love chamber music. I wish I could play it more often now. But most of my time now is spent teaching my students and with just my wind quintet and the symphony. So I wonder, I've been scheming my years here. I've been scheming about, man, there's got to be a way to start another chamber ensemble here. I've
Yes.
talked to the executive director with the symphony about it. I'm like, man, we should have like a mixed chamber music series. You know,
Yes.
not just wind quintet, resident brass group, resident string group, which we do have in our symphony, but you know, we should plan in pieces like Beethoven's septet, or Mozart, what is it called? The Mozart, like
Very.
Mozart piano pieces, or like Schumann string quintets and Brahms piano trios. Like that should be planned into the season.
Yes.
Or you know, Reinecke octet, and he's like, well, I don't know, like, but he wants to do it. He wants to
Uh-huh.
do it. I'll just keep bothering him about it.
Hmm. Do you have a favorite concert experience that you could share?
Hmm. Let me see. A favorite concert experience. Man, there's so many.
Mm,
Just one?
as many as you like.
One?
Orchestral one, chamber,
Hmm.
solo.
Well, hmm. Well, a couple concerts are sticking with me right now. I remember the first time I played the Marriage of Figaro Overture. It
Mm,
was I was getting my bachelor's degree, and um, so one of the faculty members' sons died. I can't remember. It was a little while ago, and we played a concert in honor of him, and um, and we played one of the pieces with was the overture to the Marriage of Figaro. So I had never played the piece before, and you know, every bassoon player knows that that's standard repertoire for us. That's something every bassoon player should know. And so I got to play second bassoon to my professor, and it was just a really memorable experience. We played Beethoven 7, not the whole. I don't think we played the whole piece. I think we just played maybe one or two movements. Um, with a couple other pieces, I think Mendelssohn Hebrides Overture is just really great music. Just really great music. That again, I'd never heard of a lot of these pieces. My first time, not even my first time playing it, but my first time knowing that some of these pieces exist. I knew Beethoven. I knew Beethoven, and I knew who Mozart was, but I didn't know about the Marriage of Figaro until maybe several months before we played that piece. So it's just really exciting to play music like that and just be immersed in that all of a sudden, let alone play with your professors, which is really great musicians. And then another concert that comes to mind is, well, I played Marriage of Figaro again, the entire opera. We played the entire opera with Prague Summer Nights 4 times in that one summer. I think that's standard for them. I think they do Marriage of Figaro every year. So that was very tiring. We did it twice in one day, or the opera twice in one day. But it was memorable because I was tired. But at the end of it all, and that was the last day of the festival. We did it twice, and I remember, you know, I'm so tired, but I don't think I'd want to be tired from anything else but this.
mhm.
That was basically the thought that crossed my mind. So that's when I really knew. I was like, you know, I don't regret one bit leaving education and going to performance.
Hmm.
So that was really memorable. And then probably my first concert playing with Midland-Odessa Symphony.
Oh.
Um, just you know, being in a big hall like that. We're way out here in the middle of nowhere in West Texas. But we have a state-of-the-art concert hall. The acoustics are amazing. Yeah, you know, you're my predecessor. You know, but our listeners might not know. The Wagner Noel is a fantastic concert hall. The acoustics are excellent. And let me see, what was on the program? We played Berlioz. It was a Berlioz concert, so we did Roman Carnival Overture, which I had already played. So that was kind of nice that my first concert was a piece that, you know, I had played already. So that was nice to do it. And then we did the Mozart violin concerto. I don't remember which one because there was no bassoons on it. I think it was the fifth concerto. and then we did Symphony Fantastique.
Wow.
So, you know, talk about a what's the word? Initiation process for a principal bassoon player in an orchestra. You know, my first gig on the job is Berlioz Symphony Fantastique.
Welcome to
Let's throw them in the yeah. Yeehaw, right? Let's see if you can do it. Right? And it was really great. I mean, of course, you know, I was younger, less experienced. I was super nervous. I didn't have a bow tie yet. And like I was depending on I didn't know how to make reeds in the climate yet. It was a little more humid than Tucson where I went to grad school. So I couldn't remember how to make reeds in a more humid climate. And, you know, I was still getting used to living around here. And so I was super nervous. I was incredibly nervous, and you know, it's a long piece. I was tired. I had never played with anybody before, but all in all, it went well. I feel like I played well, and my section played really well. That was exciting, playing with 3 other bassoon players, and we're all going. So yeah, that was just a really great way to say welcome to Texas, as you said.
I love hearing your stories, Philip. Can you share a memorable audition or competition experience?
Audition or competition?
Hmm.
Well, I've got a one that I'd like to forget. I remember a competition I did. I think it was a concerto competition. And when was that? I know I played the Weber concerto. I'm pretty sure I was an undergrad, because I don't think I would have done the following if I were a grad student. So I I was feeling pretty good with this competition. I played the Weber. Yeah, it was my bachelor's degree, because in my bachelor's degree they make you play the whole piece. But then in graduate school, their competition was they had 4 people win, 4 people from each family of instruments: strings, woodwinds, brass, and then I think piano. And I think percussion was put with brass or something like that. So yeah, in my bachelor's degree, I competed by performing the Weber concerto, and my reed was the reed that I decided yeah, and I see you making that face already. Any bassoon player, if I say, yeah, my reed, every bassoon player is like, no, don't do that. I pulled an amateur move, and I messed with my reed the day of the concert. And, you know, maybe that's not such an amateur move, because if you've been playing for 30, 40 years, then you might know exactly what to do with that reed, and then it's going to work out well. But, you know, I was only 20 years old or something like that. I'd only been taking lessons for 4 years. So, and I'd only been making reeds for about 1 year. But I knew with that reed, I was like, you know, it's just not full enough. Like I didn't feel like I was getting a big enough sound that I wanted on the first and third movements. So I adjusted that reed, and what I could have done to help with that was get a softer reed for the slower movement, for the second movement. But in my mind, I said, no, let's just play on this one reed. I don't want to have to fuss with changing reeds in the middle of a performance. I would rather just play on the reed that I know how it plays. I just played the first movement, just keep playing on that reed. And sure enough, that reed was super hard and super stiff for the second movement. And I got so tired, and I couldn't make a good sound. It was out of tune. My vibrato was really gross. And my face just didn't feel right. So the first movement was great. It was, you know, really big sound that my teacher wanted me to have, and I wanted it too, and it sounded great. And then the second movement was just really quite pitiful, and I was tired. So then the third movement, although I had a pretty good read for the third movement, I was too tired. So the third movement wasn't very good either. And then after the I knew I didn't advance. There was no doubt in my mind that I didn't advance. So I didn't bother to stick around for, I just went back to the green room, and I packed up, and my teacher came back there. He came back to the other room, and he said, dude, what happened? I was like, I just said, I don't know. My reed wasn't working.
Mhm.
I didn't want to give him, I didn't want to give him the full story because I was embarrassed. I
Mhm.
think eventually I told him that I told him what actually happened, but in the moment I was just embarrassed because I knew I kind of shot myself in the foot.
Mhm.
But that was, yeah, that was pretty embarrassing.
Mhm. Would you want to share a bit more about your reed making style and techniques?
Yeah, sure. So
Mhm.
hopefully I have a bit more wisdom now about reeds than almost a decade ago or whatever that was. So I well, actually, to preface this, I am sort of in the midst of a reed making protocol change. But I can tell you the things that are kind of universal. Like I always do these things. So I play on. Actually, I'll tell you about my bassoon first, and that maybe will shape. Um, you see that joke I made there? Shape the way I make my reeds. So I play on a Musman thick wall. It's a 222A, and I use Fox 2 Gonzalez, or it's Argentina cane from, and I buy it GSP from Wamba Williams. I don't fuss with gouging, shaping, profiling. I don't spend any time on that. I prefer to spend my time. I prefer to pay someone else to do that, and then spend my time just making the blank and scraping the reed, practicing, teaching my students, and other things. And so I buy my reeds already GSP, and then I make them into. Now this is where I'm changing things up a little bit. Normally, when I make I'm trying to get this off the drying rack. Here we go. So I've just started leaving my reeds like this, wrapped in the string.
Mhm.
And this is I'm doing this with a few reeds just as an experiment. Once I got to graduate school, and that was a dry climate, I was told, it's such a dry climate. Once you fold the reed, and you can just take the string off and put wires on it the next day because the reed dries out so quickly. It's kind of going to assume that position, and you can get to a blank much quicker. So I was like, okay, I'll just do that. I mean, if it's quicker, what bassoon player, how many bassoon players actually want to spend countless hours making reeds? Unless they actually want to do that for a living and, sell reeds to people. But if you're principal bassoon or you're a very busy teacher, probably don't want to spend countless hours doing that. So that's why I buy GSP, and that's why I want to find quick ways to just, I've got a blank, a week later, I've got a blank. So these have been drying out for a few days. I'll probably wait a week and then just see how the shape is. Um, and then I score and I bevel just like everyone else. And then normally some bassoon players like to scrape their reeds in stages. This day I scrape it this way. This day I scrape this, and then the next day they're very methodical with that. I've never really been taught to do that, and I've never noticed an obvious benefit to doing that. I've found that if you scrape intentionally the first day, and maybe the second day too, and it's good cane, then it's going to be a good reed, and it's going to be fine. If it's an unstable reed and it sounds kind of bad, it was probably going to be a bad reed anyway. That's what I've been taught. But I'm starting to believe that's not so true. I'm starting to believe that, well, you should, even when you start scraping a blank, you should scrape it in stages. Um, so so before, what I would normally do is I just take a blank, and actually get a blank right here. I'll just take a blank. I got this. I make sure the wires are tight enough. Just double check they're tight enough and they're in the right spot. Clip it to a certain length. Soak it, and then I scrape the front third of the reed, and then I sand it down, and and then I play on it. And it's probably going to be flat because I just scraped it and it's been dry for a long time. But then the next day, it kind of settles down, has a better sound, and you leave it a little long, and then I just slowly clip it and scrape it just a little bit. Just clip as small amount as you can, and scrape or sand as little as you can until it plays in tune and the sound is stable and you have a good dynamic range and it responds really well. But now I'm going to experiment with doing that same thing, but just taking longer to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So now I clip it. I start even longer, and then I'm going to only scrape the front third of the reed instead of the front half of the reed, and sanding it on the first day. And then the next day, I'll kind of do that process again at a shorter length. And then the third day, that's when I'll sand it. I'll sand the back half or the back third of the reed down, and then see how it plays from there. So, and then also I actually just posted on Instagram that one of my resolutions is to have more blanks, because normally I've noticed that I kind of go in spurts.
Mm-hmm.
So sometime around August, I have a ton of blanks, but then they all vanish by October because all my students have come back from the summer, and they're like, I need reeds, and so I'm out of reeds. And then Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving comes around, and I've got more reeds then, because it's the holidays, I'm making reeds. And then so I go and I have these spurts. So, one of my resolutions is to have more blanks. And then I also go in spurts. Right now I have seven. Oh, you can't see. I have 7 reeds right here. And I kind of rotate. I generally rotate through like 4 reeds. But I'm strongly considering rotating through double that, and being more intentional about I always hear about bassoon players, they'll soak a reed that's, there seems to be a divide in the bassoon world. Actually, some bassoon players, they'll soak a reed that's like 8 months old, and they're like, no, trust me, it plays really well, and they soak it for like 20 minutes. And have you heard of bassoon players that do that? Yeah. So and I haven't met very many who do that.
Mm.
I've met most of the bassoon players I've met kind of look at you funny when you're playing on a reed that's more than a month old. What? That reed's 4 weeks old? Throw it away. There's no way it's good. I've always been that way. So I'm thinking, well, why do I need to have a lot of reeds? Let me just, if I just have 4 reeds, I rotate these 4 reeds throughout the month, and then I have 4 more the next month. I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take time scraping the reed, and then you scrape at it 3 days, just a little bit at a time, and don't scrape too much at a time, then there might be a chance that it'll last longer if you're scraping in the right places. So starting at the front of the reed and then working your way back. And then if you're rotating, everyone says rotate your reeds because they last longer. Well, why not rotate like 20 reeds, 30 reeds, and then don't play on that reed until you've played on the other 19 or 29 reeds, and just see how long they last. I was just working with another bassoonist. I don't know if he would feel comfortable with me mentioning his name, so I won't say his name. But I was just working with him, and he does that. He says that he took a reed that looked like this, and he said, "Yeah, this reed has been sitting like this for 5 years." And I thought he was joking. He was serious. He was serious. And then he took a blank, and we're cutting open blanks, and he said, "Yeah, this reed has been sitting around for 4 years." And I thought he was joking. He was serious. And then he said in an email, I rotate about 30 reeds. I play on this reed this day, this one this day, and so on. And he's like, it's going to be about a month until I get to that reed again. And the actual reeds he's playing on last about 2 years. Now, if you have a private student who's like 13, 14, 15, and they have a 2-year-old reed, most teachers are like, that's really gross, throw that away. But this guy he's I would call him a world-class bassoon player. He
Fantastic.
sounds great to me. He has a great job. He's very, very confident in his routine,
Mm-hmm.
and his reeds don't look moldy and gross. So if he has a 2-year-old reed, then that's not a bother to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I said, you know what, that's really interesting. I think I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that. So I'm going to work my way up. Right, I'm rotating. I think some of those reeds are for students. I'm rotating, I think, 6 or 7 reeds right now. Hopefully by
Mm-hmm.
the end of January, I can be rotating 12. Hopefully I can have 12.
Mm-hmm.
So, 'cause I can fit 12 in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my goal. So yeah, that's basically how I do my reads. I
Mm.
don't know if you wanted more specifics about like how long is the read or anything. I don't know. Everyone does something different. So I don't know if it's useful to get into those specifics.
I love hearing an overview. So
Okay.
thank you for
Okay.
sharing that, Philip. How do you cope with music performance anxiety? Do you have any tips for people and what you do for yourself?
Uh, Practice.
Uh-huh.
No, I really mean that. Practice. Um, I mean, most people I know, well, let me put it this way. I only know one person for whom practice isn't enough. Like, or not practice isn't enough. How do I say that? Practice is probably just not the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I only know one person. Most of the other people I've met who seem to get really nervous, they're not as prepared as they're not as prepared as they think they could be.
Mm-hmm.
Not as because some of these people are my students, right? So if I think that they're not prepared, if I just keep my mouth shut, then they might not get nervous, right? If it's like a beginner who has no idea, like they're not, their mind is not really open to the idea of being humiliated on stage playing an instrument. So some kids are just like that. They'll just go up on stage and play and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if I keep my mouth shut, then it's fine. But some students, they know in their mind, if they know like I could do better than this. I feel like for them, that's the number one thing that makes them nervous or makes them anxious, is that they feel like they're not prepared. And then that's for kids. That's for kids. And I think that a lot of times, a lot of teenagers are like, mom, you don't know what you're talking about. They're trying to gain their independence from their parents, and they think they know everything. And of course, we as adults, especially parents and teachers, we say, well, these kids have no idea. A lot of times I think kids do know better than we do, because as we get older, we start to rationalize our problems that we know are just unacceptable. Uh, um, so, like with kids, they know that they're just not prepared. They
Mm-hmm.
know it's as simple as that, because they don't know the ins and outs of, oh, well, my reed's not working. And well, what if the climate's not right? What if I'm late? What if there's something wrong with my bassoon? What if this? What if that? Adults have all those problems. What if I can't pay my mortgage? What if my car breaks down? Kids who can't even drive yet, and they don't have their own kids, and they don't have a job, they don't think about those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then we as adults, we go to college, and then our mind is open to like, oh, I have to make good use out of this degree that I'm working all through summer to be able to pay for. If I don't win this audition, if I don't get this job, then I'll never be anything, right? But that makes people nervous, but really it comes back to just being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, not all the time. I do think that sometimes it can be other things too, um, like very particular scenarios, but most of the time it just comes down to, do you feel like you've prepared as much as you can?
Mm-hmm.
And there's one more thing. The other thing is that, and I'm gonna steal from what I heard. I think trumpeters and the Canadian brass.
Mm.
I had the privilege of seeing the Canadian brass do a master class several years ago, um, and one of the questions to him was this very question, and he said something that has stuck with me ever since. He said, "Yes, you're going to be nervous. You know, like what if you mess up? What if you trip on your heels, or your reed breaks, or you whatever? There's spit in your horn or something, and it doesn't sound as good as you feel like it could have." He says, don't let those thoughts consume you. You should be consumed by the thoughts of, someone is coming here to see me play.
Yes.
This is an incredible honor and an incredible joy that someone is listening to me play. They want to see what I've prepared. They want me to share with them the music that I have. If you truly are nervous, if you're anxious about playing, it should be because you have that good excitement about, oh, finally someone wants to see me play. Someone's paying to see me play, or someone, like, I could win this job. It should be that good anxiety. It should be like, I don't know, if there's a girl out there that you want to impress, or a guy you want to impress, or something, or if it's you're trying to get a job, or you're trying to captivate the hearts and the minds of young kids, or something like that. That should consume your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And you might still get nervous from that, or like a butterflies in your stomach, but that's a good nervous.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good nervous, and I don't think nerves will go away. I don't think either kind of nerves truly goes away. I think both the bad and the good don't. They stay there. But as long as you try be prepared as you can, and focus on the good things about playing, the good ways that you're going to be nervous, then you'll learn how to cope with those nerves. You'll learn how to cope with the anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, one more thing is, just perform more. Just
Mm-hmm.
play for people more. I think that a lot of people who get nervous, they actually haven't had that experience that often. Because if you're like 57 years old and you've been playing with the same symphony for 30 years, you're probably not going to get that nervous. Why? Because you just do it all the time. So if you're like 16 years old, or 18 or 20, 22, and you're nervous, well, of course you're nervous. You haven't done this very much. So just keep practicing, keep playing for people, find as many opportunities as you can to play for people, and focus on the good reasons why you're nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And you just get used to it.
Is there any final advice that you can share for young musicians just starting out their music careers?
Practice.
Good one.
No. Well, I wouldn't leave it just at that. I would say two things that maybe contradict each other, but I think it's important to do both of them. No, those two things are, when you're young and you don't have responsibilities yet, you're not fully responsible for maintaining your own instrument. Like, let's say, in the case of bassoon players, normally we're renting an instrument, or we're using our school's bassoon. It's not a cheap instrument. Your parents can't just buy you a bassoon like they would buy you a trumpet or a cheaper instrument. You have less responsibilities. You don't have a job. You're not driving a car. You don't have kids. You're not married. Do as many things as you can. So I'm not talking just to musicians right now. I mean just young people who are in music, like they're in band, or they're in choir, or in orchestra. Do as much as you can. Find many things you like to do, whether it's sports, music, whatever, acting, something to do with, I've got students who are in martial arts, and like fencing, and like they ride horses and stuff like that. Do those things, and try to fill your time with as many things, useful things as possible. You know, not sitting watching Netflix every weekend. If you can garden with your parents, go garden with your parents. If you can build a house with your big brother or something like that, go build a house. I had a high school buddy who bought a car when he was like 12 or 13 or something like that, and worked on the car until he was old enough to drive it. And, you know, so he knows a ton about cars. You know, just do things, do things, do things, do things. Because you can, because you can afford that risk. But then at the same time, which it sounds contradictory, but I don't think it's contradictory if you fully do this first thing that I just said. The second thing, if you find something that you truly love, you get joy out of it regardless of whether it's going well or it's going poorly, and you're good at it. Drop everything and run for that. Just drop everything and run. Now, when should you do that? I don't really know. I mean, it depends. You know, there's prodigy pianists who start at like 4 years old. So should they drop everything and run? Maybe they're that good. But I guess drop everything and run when you really know that in your heart. When you feel called to do that, when you feel like, I love, like for me, I knew I wanted to be in an orchestra when I was in orchestra and things were going poorly. When I wasn't having a good time, when my colleagues were annoying me, or when I was annoying them, when I said something that offended someone, when I was disrespectful to other people, they were disrespectful to me. My reed wasn't working. Somebody broke their instrument. I broke mine, whatever. Even when things were going poorly, I had the resolve to be there. I wanted to be there. You know, kind of like a marriage, right? Like, I'm not married yet, so what do I really know what I'm talking about? But you know, a lot of people say, like, if things are going wrong and when you're dating someone, and then you kind of have that resolve to want to fix things, it might be good if you were married. If you get into a fight with someone and you're like, man, I kind of knew this wasn't really going to work out, then you probably shouldn't get married. I would say the same thing for your career. If you're like working on reeds and you're unbelievably upset when your reed messes up, or when you can't play something right, or when you're being disrespected, or you're disrespecting others in an orchestra, or just things like that, things just aren't going well, that might be a sign that maybe you want to do something else, or like do something else for a living. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it at all. I'm not trying to tell people like, hey, if one thing goes wrong and you get really upset, you should stop playing bassoon. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that maybe it's not something you'd want as your primary use of your time and your primary source of income. That's how I knew I wanted to be in music. Things were going wrong and I still wanted to be there. And I really knew because I did a bunch of other things. I did education. I played piano. I played drums. I was at this school. I was at that school. I played soccer. I did all these things. And I said, you know what? Things were going wrong in all those other places, and I didn't want to be there anymore. I wanted to quit. Things were going wrong playing bassoon in an orchestra, and I went home and said, I know I can be better. That's when you really know. So just listen to that voice and then practice.
Who do you think I should interview next?
Have you interviewed Richard Meek?
I would love to interview Richard. Would you like to nominate Richard?
well, actually, I don't know him, but I thought you've interviewed him already. I don't know him, so I can't say whether you should interview him or not. But I've heard a lot about him, so yeah, maybe that would be good to connect with him.
Wonderful.
Let me see who. Oh man, I would really like to. Well, I'll say his name. So the guy I was working on reeds with, I think you should interview him. So we were just working together a couple of weeks ago. Joseph Grimmer, he's the principal
Okay,
bassoon of the Kennedy Center Opera, and he's
wonderful.
a professor of bassoon at the University of Maryland. A
Wonderful. I'd love to
very
reach
great
out to
player,
him.
very, very great player, wonderful sound, and very measured person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Joseph Grimmer and Richard Meek would be really great.
Wonderful. Philip, thank you so much for this interview. It's wonderful to get a glimpse into your life and career as a professional musician.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here.
For everyone tuning in, keep an eye out for new videos with great bassoon guests every Thursday Central Standard Time. On the Let's Link project, every guest interviewed here is hosting a free online open panel discussion via Zoom the following Sunday Central Standard Time, and you can register for Philip's session on the Music Link website. Please like, comment, and share any questions or feedback in the section below, and subscribe to this channel for new video notifications each week. Check out the Instagram and Facebook pages for more updates too. The Music Link is a New Zealand-based online resource for people to share, learn, and connect. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video.